I would be a junkie for the rest of my life because that feeling was so great. If this makes people happy and it feels this good, why is it so wrong? And the worst part about it was I had my son with me, and eventually my son was inconveniencing my lifestyle. I'm like, no cops, and I'm freaking out because I have drugs on me and I have a gun on me. I was going to shoot myself in the head, but I didn't want to die sober, so I just got really super high. I was so high that I had the gun in my hand and I nodded off and the gun went off. I didn't know where I stood with my faith. I didn't know what my higher power was. There had to have been some force that was governing my life and watching over me. I told my mom and I immediately started crying and I said, I'm so sorry. That was the day I really began again. Everything changed.
You're listening to the Begin Again podcast, where real stories of addiction, recovery, and transformation take center stage. I'm Gary Menkes, and each week we bring you honest conversations with people who chose to stop surviving and start living. These are the stories that remind us healing is possible. No matter where you've been or what you've faced, it's never too late to take your power back. Thanks for being here. Let's begin again. Welcome back to the Begin Again podcast, where we celebrate the quiet courage of starting over. These are stories of healing, hope, and the radical transformation that sobriety makes possible. And joining us tonight is a super talented and creative musician, producer, songwriter, and a powerful advocate for recovery. His story is one of resilience, redemption, and the transformative power of recovery. Through his advocacy work, and musical endeavors, he continues to inspire others to find their own harmony in sobriety, which I love. He is a living testament to the fact that with determination, support, and the healing power of music, one can overcome even the darkest of times and emerge into a life of fulfillment, purpose, and sobriety. He is Josh Datant. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to hearing this. We were just talking offline. I was looking into some of your stuff. We were introduced by a mutual friend, Jason. We got to give out a shout out to Jason. He's one of my favorite people in the space. He's embraced me since I first came on the scene, so to speak, even though I didn't know I was doing that with this podcast. And so anyone that he brings me on, introduced me to, is a friend of mine. I'm glad you're here, man.
Yeah, thank you. Jason's a wonderful human being, and I have a deep admiration and respect for him. And he spoke highly of you.
He's a good man. He's a good man for sure. So take us back, man. Like, I know you have some background with music, and you see behind me is sports, but over there, all my music pictures, I'm a big Fish. I love Fish. Is one of my favorite bands. But take us back to some of your background, man. How was it growing up for you? And, when did things started perhaps going off the rails for you?
Well, my mom has had some issues with alcohol herself. And in my house growing up, chaos was sort of accepted because everybody's life was chaotic. My mom moved us around a lot. We didn't have a lot of stability, you know what I mean? And so there was that. My mom was very artistic, very into music, which is cool, but I feel like she did the best she could. She probably could have used some help. I didn't have my dad around, so my dad split when I was really young, and it was just my mom. And like I said, she did the best she could, but she had a lot of issues with alcohol, and she was a case. She was a case. Tough to handle sometimes.
Yeah.
From an early age, I witnessed drinking culture and drug culture. And, I'm from Los Angeles, so it's pretty socially acceptable over there to be high or drunk and to experiment and alter your perception a little bit.
Sure.
So when I was really young, I never thought I'd drink or do drugs because I saw my mom and I was like, I never want to end up like that. But then I got older and I started to get curious and go, why does she do it? Like, if I'm doing this, there must be something to it. And then I started reading about my heroes, Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin, Slash, guys like that. And, Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy. These guys were all heroin addicts.
Yeah.
So I started to get older and they all drank too. So I thought, well, maybe I'll try drinking. And I started drinking when I was about 11. And after that, everything just opened up. I was like, wow, now I loved being drunk. I loved the feeling that it brought me, and I wanted to try everything. So I knew eventually I'd get into hard drugs. I kind of made it up in my mind at 11. I was like, yeah, I'm going to try everything now. This is fun. And it's such a crazy thing to think and say. I have a 15-year-old son now, and I can't even imagine him drinking or doing drugs. Like,
Scary, yeah.
so,
Well, that's scary stuff, man. I'm with you there.
yeah. So I started drinking, and I started drinking heavily when I was 14. I was hanging out at the skate park, and everybody was drinking and doing drugs in the back. And we were all a bunch of, young punk kids that liked rock music and, stuff like that. And we liked getting into trouble, being rebellious. And skateboard culture is a lot like music culture, especially rock music, in that there's a lot of drinking, drugs, and, excess and hedonism. So
Yeah.
my friends related to me in a big way. And a lot of them were musicians too. A lot of my skateboard friends also played guitar, drums, or bass. And so we all got along really well. And I injured myself skateboarding when I was young and got a herniated disc in my back and basically got hooked on painkillers that were prescribed to me by a doctor.
Ooh.
I remember I was at a friend's house one day. My stepdad and my mom went through a really bad divorce, and my stepdad cut off the insurance. He took everything from us. Like, their divorce was really bitter, really bad. We didn't have anywhere else to go. We were practically homeless. We were living different places, couch surfing, and we ended up moving into a condemned house for a little while, which was really crazy. Yeah. But I got dope sick, as they call it, at a friend's house, and he recognized immediately what was going on with me and knew that I was taking painkillers. And he was like, "It's from those painkillers you take. That's why you're so sick like this." And I was like, "No, that can't be. Like, why would they give you that shit if it makes you sick?" And he was like, "Oh, can I cuss on this podcast?"
Yeah, let them fly, brother. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So he was like, "No, you're absolutely dope sick. That's what this is. I guarantee it." I said, "Well, what can I do? Do you know anybody where I can get some more pain pills?" And he goes, "I don't know anybody that has pain pills, but I know somebody that has heroin, and it's the same thing." He was like, "But I wouldn't do it if I were you. If I were you, I would just ride it out." But being stubborn and really sick, and in that first real state, like, it's the first time I was ever really dope sick, and I had been taking these pills for quite a long time.
Mm.
So I was just like fight or flight. I immediately was like, "Give me the heroin. If that's what's going to make me better, let's do it."
How old were you at this point?
At this point, I'm about 15.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. He called somebody up, and someone showed up with the $20 bag of China White. I snorted it, and within 5 minutes felt way better and got really high. It was really potent stuff, and like much more high than the pain pills made me, and immediately said out loud, "I'm in big trouble." I knew right then and there, like, I was hooked. So I
Wow.
said out loud, "I'm in big trouble." My friend asked me, he goes, "How you feeling?" I go, "All I know is I never want this feeling to go away." And at that moment, I just kind of assumed I would be a junkie for the rest of my life, because that feeling was so great. It was so amazing. I needed it to stay with me for the rest of my life. I reconciled with that I would just be a heroin addict forever, or as long as I could be.
Wow.
That was my introduction to heroin, and that's how it all started.
I have to back up a little bit. And it's almost tongue in cheek that some of your favorite rockers is some of my favorite ones too, like Jimmy Page and to me, there's Led Zeppelin and then there's everyone else for starters. But when you were talking about your mom and the music scene and she was really into music, you brought me back to the first music I ever listened to was Led Zeppelin. My dad had all the records and like there was always guys in and out of the house and seeing stuff, young kids aren't supposed to be seeing, but music was at the forefront of that. All that, he grew up in the 60s. I think he actually saw Zeppelin's first U.S. appearance, I believe, is what he had told me. And then you mentioned Slash and you mentioned Jimmy Page, and Slash, I believe, is so sober. I think he is too. I'm not 100% sure, but it also maybe my girlfriend, 20 something years ago, I was really struggling with alcohol. And she gave me this book. It was called Courage to Change. And it's all these excerpts of like these famous people, celebrities that are sober. And and for some reason, Pete Townshend's excerpt from there, like really stood out to me and really made an impact. I was like, wow, this guy's sober too. Like, maybe I could have a life sober, because I couldn't picture myself in a sober being, having a life without drinking, I should say. And drinking led me to all other stuff. That was the other point that I really touched on with you. I saw a lot of cocaine when I was a kid, and I hated cocaine my whole life growing up because of it. I was never going to do that stuff. And go figure, as I got a little bit older and started drinking, I found it for the first time and let me drink more. And then boom, I was off to the races with that stuff. But that's another story. My point is, I relate in a roundabout way to a lot of the stuff you're telling me as you're growing up, man. So go ahead, keep going, man. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to say I'm relating. You bring me back a little bit, man.
No, yeah, feel free to interject and interrupt and ask me questions. I love an interactive.
I will say, and I know for myself too, and I've heard so many people, man, it's almost heartbreaking to see a 15, thinking and looking at you as a 15-year-old, and you're, boom, you know it and you love it, because I can relate to that too. And it's almost like you're chasing that, for the rest of your run. And that run could be decades sometimes. And I know for you, I think it was a long, long time. I know when you came in, I believe it was 2021 or something like that. Were you chasing that? And where did some of we talk about bottoms a lot in here, right? And there's one thing I learned in rehab was, you can have a bottom here, but here's a shovel, because you can keep digging yourself a lower bottom. And that one always stuck with me as well. And, where did it take you? Where are some of the places it took you, if you're comfortable sharing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The first time I got high on heroin, it was like nothing I had ever experienced in my life. It was the single greatest feeling and moment of my life at that point. And I thought to myself, like, if this makes people happy and it feels this good, why is it so wrong? Why is it illegal? Why is it illicit? This is ridiculous. Like, it's just something that makes people feel good. And I'm totally okay with doing this, regardless of the consequences and the legal ramifications and all that. Like, I'll take my chances. It's totally
Right.
worth it. And I was still drinking very heavily too at this time. Mixing alcohol and heroin was a nice little thing I like to do, but then I would do cocaine to wake myself up. And so I was speedballing, but that was kind of down the line. Eventually, my habit got way out of control, and my friends staged an intervention, and they were like, "You gotta get off the heroin because it's destroying your life." And
Mm.
so a friend of mine took me to his house and helped me get clean for a couple of days. I basically they weaned me off using hydrocodone and Percocets. I had a friend who had sustained a couple of injuries, and I'm not gonna say his name, but I almost said his name. But yeah, he was giving me a little bit at a time to sort of wean me off so that I wasn't completely miserable.
Yeah.
And so I stayed clean for a couple of weeks, but then I relapsed and I didn't tell anybody. I basically, yeah, stayed on opiates on and off. As long as I could get them, I would always get them. So this happened in Michigan, this whole period of time. I came down to Texas to be with my grandfather who was ill, and
Mm.
almost immediately found a morphine connection. I found somebody that had morphine. And so I started buying morphine, and yeah, basically same thing. Like, this person had an endless supply because they had a tumor in the base of their spine, and the doctors did some experimental surgery, but they basically told them they would have pain for the rest of their life. And so they had a healthy prescription of morphine.
Whew.
And I was buying the extra morphine that this person had. And I eventually found more heroin too and started doing heroin. And I was doing a lot of cocaine as well at the time and continuing to drink like a fish. I went through a weird period where I didn't know what I was going to do with my life or anything like that. And then I cleaned up for a time and I bought this clothing store. It was a vintage clothing store. And then I bought a
Mm.
recording studio and opened it up with the producer of the Strokes. The Strokes are one of my favorite modern bands.
Awesome.
I did that and I was sober for a little while. And I thought, well, if this goes well, this could be my life and maybe I don't need the dope after all. But then I
Mm.
started to fall off a little bit and I'd drink here and there and then I'd want to use drugs. So I got arrested and I thought, man, I can't do this. Like, I can't keep this up. Like, if I get arrested and I still drink and I do drugs, like, all this is going to go away. I didn't listen to myself and I started buying morphine again and I relapsed, and Eventually I sold my clothing store. The recording studio went away. That finished up. I sold the store, and everything that I had sold the store for, I shot up my arm.
Mm.
And so this is for quite a while, maybe 2 years. And I got into a relationship. And in the relationship, the person I was with encouraged me to get clean. And so I did. And I was able to stay clean for a little while. But then I started drinking alcohol like crazy. I was drinking like a fish all the time, every day. And she drank too. It was acceptable for me to drink. It just wasn't acceptable to do opiates. And so I compromised and I said, okay, I'll just drink. But I was drinking a lot. And eventually we split up. And then I got into another relationship. And this girl was very much about experimenting. She had never done hard drugs, but she wanted to try them. And when she sort of alluded to that to me, I was like, oh, I can introduce you to hard drugs. So I introduced her to cocaine and various other illicit substances. And I unfortunately encouraged her to drink as much as she wanted. And she did the same for me. And we partied and we had great times. And we'd go to rock shows and festivals. And it was a lot of fun, but I was slowly, racking up a habit again. I got to a point where I was drinking and doing so many drugs that like I started to get physically sick again when I wouldn't drink or do drugs. I couldn't not drink without getting sick. And she ended up becoming the same way. We just kind of kept it up and didn't stop. And eventually I got a record deal and I had built up this life. I had 3 cars. I had a really nice apartment. I had money that I was making. I was making really good money. And then I had this record deal and I'm in a band and I'm doing really great things. And I'm going on tour and I'm playing shows. And I'm traveling with quite a bit of heroin on me at all times. And I'm figuring out where to get heroin in every city that we're playing. And uh,
Mm.
I remember it doesn't exist anymore. So I can say it. There was an app called Whisper and you
Mm-hmm.
post on Whisper for all kinds of things. But people posted a lot about drugs and whether or not they had them or where to get them, or you could post, hey, where do I get this? And people
Wow.
responded a message anonymously and you'd set up a meet. And same thing with Craigslist. In certain cities, you can get drugs off Craigslist. You just have to know the key word. So
Wow.
we were touring the same spots and I would figure out where to get these drugs. And I basically went from having all these things in my dream job, a career that I really wanted, to having none of it. I lost it all within a year. I lost my girlfriend. I lost my record contract. I lost my apartment. I lost my vehicles. And a lot of the stuff I sold or I just gave away. And I got robbed. I lost a lot of the gear I had bought for shows. Like I lost synthesizers, guitars, amplifiers, compute with hard drives filled with music on them. And I was living out of hotels and I was getting robbed quite frequently. So I started engaging in identity theft because
Wow.
with identity theft, you could make a lot of money on a daily basis, which was terrible. And I don't recommend anybody ever do it. But I had somebody show me how to print and cash fraudulent checks. I figured out how to get credit card information. I figured out how to get driver's license information, social security numbers, the whole thing. And that was how I started making my money, was crime. I continued to live out of hotels. And the worst part about it was I had my son with me while engaging in some of this behavior. And eventually my son was inconveniencing my lifestyle.
Mm.
So I gave up custody of him because I was so far gone on dope that I couldn't have him with me. And I knew it wasn't fair to do that to him anyway.
Yeah.
But that was my biggest regret, through everything. I regret losing all my stuff in a way, but I don't, because I have new stuff now and I have a new life and I got it all back essentially. But I do
Right.
regret losing custody of my son. My mom has custody of him now and she lets me see him whenever I want, but it's still a big bummer that he doesn't live with me, and if I had just straightened up, he could still be living with me. But
How old was he when you had to let him go?
he was about 10, 9 or 10.
Gotcha.
He's 15 now. He'll be 16 this year.
There you go. All right.
Yeah. And there's a lot more to that story. I mean, he was getting sick because I wasn't taking care of him. He has diabetes, and I was not managing his lifestyle very well at all. And it was
Right.
awful. I have a lot of regrets behind that too. But I started consistently getting locked up and going to jail and, custodial correctional facilities.
Right.
And I became accustomed to being locked up, as it were. I could still find dope while I was locked up. Dope exists in prison and in jail too.
Yep.
So does booze. They have hooch. It's called hooch.
Yeah.
I'm in this crazy sort of criminal mindset and I've got nothing. I lost my career. I lost my house. I lost my vehicles. I lost my girlfriend. And most importantly, I lost my son. I was just really losing my mind. I started smoking meth too at
Mm.
this point in my life, and that really screwed me up and really derailed everything for me because meth makes you crazy. I mean, it literally puts you into a psychotic episode.
Yeah.
I go in to this place called SMART, which stands for Self-Management and Recovery Training, the corrections-based rehab facility. It's basically jail. You have to do rehab programming every day,
Right.
court ordered, and this is from actual jail itself. And I get out and I go and I stay with my brother, and my brother is having issues at the time. I could tell he was having some issues. So he was kind of standoffish towards me and he was really weird. He wouldn't let me have a key to his place. So I was at his mercy. If he wasn't home and I wasn't home when I got home, if he wasn't home, then I wouldn't be able to get in. I just have to sit outside and wait. It was really awful.
Yeah.
I started to piece it all together and I figured out that he was using. My brother had been a long opiate user himself and a big time alcoholic as well. I put it all together and I figured, well, if he's using, I might as well use too. So I relapsed because I had had about 8 months of clean time and right back to doing illegal things like identity theft. And I was robbing various facilities of computers and stuff like that and selling them. And I remember I showed up to his house one day with literally 8 iMac computers that I had stolen. And he was like, where did all this come from? And I go, I bought them. And he knew I was full of shit, but he was like, dude, I don't want hot merchandise in my house. I was like, it's not hot. It's fine. Don't worry about it. So I'm gone one day and I come home and he's not home and I'm calling him and he's not answering. So I get so pissed, I just kick the door down and I'm like, I can't just stand out here and sleep outside like a dog. And I put the door back up and he texts me the next day and he's like, hey, sorry, I went out of town. Hope you found a place to stay, whatever, whatever. And he comes home and he finds his door destroyed and of course he's pissed.
Yeah.
So we get into this giant fight. And he tells me, I don't understand what your problem is. You're just a worthless junkie and you don't have anywhere to go. And I say, yeah, look, you might think that, but I can do whatever I want, whenever I want to, whoever I want. And there's no consequence or repercussion. Like I'm my own free man. I'm living my best life. You have a miserable job. You live in a miserable shithole. You have a habit yourself. At least I'm happy. I was, of course, lying. I was not happy, but we were basically arguing about who the better junkie was. I said that because I didn't have a permanent place to live, I didn't have to answer to anybody and I didn't have some boring dead end job. And he said because he had a job and a place to live and some stability, he was basically the better junkie. And so we get into a really big fight and it almost comes to blows. And the last thing I said to my brother was just to fuck off and fucking die. And I left and I took all my stuff and went right back to staying in hotels. I'm in the worst shape mentally and emotionally and physically that you can imagine. I'm smoking a lot of meth. I'm doing a lot of heroin. I'm super skinny and I'm not in my right frame of mind. And I go one day and this guy basically discusses this hustle with me that he wants me to get in on. And we're driving. He goes and he punches me, but his punch hurts really, really bad. And I'm like, wow. I go to hit him back, but then I realize I'm bleeding. And then I look and he's got a switchblade in his hand. He's stabbing me. So he stabs me 6 times, once in the stomach, a bunch of times in the arms. I don't know if you can see the scar.
Yeah. I see him now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy.
He stabs my neck. He stabs my stomach. He stabs my arms. I'm putting my face up. He was trying to stab me in the throat, but he was trying to rob me. I had $3,000 on me and he was trying to rob me. So the last place he stabs me, is the hand. I don't know if you can see
Yeah,
the
it's
scar.
it. And fingers in it.
The knife gets stuck in my hand, so I pull back and I punch him as hard as I can, and I jump out of the car. And I start walking, and I'm holding myself, and someone from a distance runs up to me, and he goes, "I saw the whole thing. I called an ambulance, and I called the police. They're on their way."
Hey, everyone, quick break to tell you about Recover. That's RCVR. If you're on this journey of recovery, you already know it's not just about quitting. It's about rebuilding. It's about self-discovery and reclaiming your best life. That's exactly why I created Recover, a lifestyle brand built for us, by us, those who have walked through the fire and come out stronger. Head over to recoverbrand.com. That's RCVRbrand.com to grab your Recover gear. We wear it as a daily reminder that you're not alone and that your story is just beginning. And because you're part of this community, use Recover20 for 20% off your first order. And wear your story, share the message, and end the stigma. Now back to the show.
And I'm like, "No cops, no cops." And I'm freaking out because I have drugs on me and
Yeah.
I have a gun on me. So I ditched the gun, I ditched the drugs. And the ambulance gets there and they ask me what happened. And I tell them, "I don't know. He just snapped and started stabbing me." They ask him what happened, and he tells them, "I was trying to kidnap him." I go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, I was trying to kidnap him. That's ridiculous." I go, "Look it, get on my phone, call the last number that I dialed, and a girl called Julia will answer. And I guarantee you, she'll tell you we were supposed to meet up with her at the academy. She's expecting us, both of us." I had no intention of so the cop on the phone, and they call and they verify. She's like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Were these two people supposed to meet you?" She's like, "Yeah, we're supposed to meet at academy." So they verify that he was lying and that I was telling the truth. So they lock him up and they take me to the hospital. They stitch me up and I'm all busted up and I can't barely move. And I get out of the hospital and I go right back to the place I was staying to get more drugs. And I'm just kind of going crazy. And I'm in a trap house this one day, a couple of days later. Well, this is a couple weeks later. And somebody walks in and they go, "Where have you been? People have been looking all over for you." And I said, "I'm here. What difference does it make?" And he goes, "Dude, your brother passed away." And I look at him and I sink for a second and I go, "No, he didn't." And he goes, "I swear to you, I'm not lying. Your brother passed away." And I go, "What brother?" And he goes, "Your brother Jonas? Is that his name?" And I go, "What?" And I go, "Are you serious?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "It's all over Facebook. People have been trying to reach you." And I hadn't been on my Facebook in God only knows how long. So, of course, I immediately fall to my knees and I start crying and I start freaking out and thinking about the last thing I said to my brother. And I went insane. I lost it. I got up. I immediately went and bought a half ounce of meth and an ounce of heroin and was just in a frenzy. And I had this car that I was borrowing from a friend that went to jail. He was like, "Hey, I'm in jail. I'll let you borrow my car." So I said, "Cool." So I stack it to the nines with fake checks and stolen credit cards and social security cards and fabricated fraudulent IDs and computers, drugs and guns. And I just went on a frenzy. And I figured the best thing I can do now is kill myself or just get caught, and go to jail again. And I basically had enough this one day. So I took a friend to the methadone clinic who incidentally was trying to encourage me to go into the clinic and get sober. And I said, "Yeah, yeah, I'll think about it." But I had no intention of doing that. So I pulled into this little neighborhood and I had this high point 380 pistol. And I had it in my mind that I was going to shoot myself in the head. But I didn't want to die sober. So I took a shot of Fireball. I took a big blast of heroin, a big blast of meth, and a little bit of fentanyl, and just got really super high. And I was so high that I had the gun in my hand and I nodded off and the gun went off. It just kind of went off. Like, I don't know, and it whizzed past my ear and it freaked me out. It stunned me. Like I immediately jumped up and went, "Oh my God," and I changed my mind instantly. I was like, "Okay, I don't want to do that anymore." But the shock and the adrenaline and all the drugs kind of kicked in all at once and I just passed out. They call that overamping when you do too much all at once and you just pass out. Wake up to the police knocking on my window. They they immediately identify that something's wrong, and they see the gun and they freak out and they pull me out and they cuff me up. And one of the police officer goes, "What are you doing?" And I go, "Honestly, I was trying to kill myself." And he goes, "Why?" And I said, "Because I was just stabbed brutally a couple of weeks ago. I can barely move. I'm a drug addict, a junkie. I lost everything in my life. I don't have anyone or anything. My brother just died. And I'm so depressed. So, take me to jail now because as soon as I get there, I want to hang myself. Like, I don't care what you guys say or do. Eventually, I'm going to end my life because I've had it. Like, I'm just a loser." And I'm in tears as I'm saying all these things. And I'm feeling sorry for myself, which was selfish, I think. But he asked me, he says, "Is there anybody I can call to verify all this information?" I go, "You want to verify that I just tried to kill myself? Like, I didn't tell anybody." And he goes, "No, just that you lost your brother, and do you have family that I can reach out to let them know where you're at?" And I said, "Well, you can call my mom, but she hears from police officers and corrections facilities so often, she'll probably just hang up on you." So he puts me in the back of his car. He gets on the phone, and I realize, oh, he's talking to her because he had a conversation on the phone for quite some time. Well, he gets into the car and he doesn't say anything to me, and I don't say anything to him, and I just start praying. I don't know what came over me, but I finally hit my rock bottom
Mm.
where I knew like my life was just, it had become completely unmanageable, like the book says. And
Yeah.
I I didn't know where I stood with my faith. I didn't know what my higher power was, but I knew that there had to have been some force that was governing my life and watching over me. And I had just been led astray by drugs. And so I surrendered in that moment. And I guess, yeah, something came over me and I prayed and I said, "God, Allah, Buddha, universe, whatever it is that's out there watching me, please get me a bond." Like, I was on probation at the time, so the chances and the likeliness of me getting a bond were like literally 1 out of a billion. There was no way I was getting a bond because when you're on probation and you get arrested, you get remanded without bond because
Right.
you're not supposed to get arrested while on probation. So I pray and I say, "Just let me call my mom and get a bond. And if you do this for me, I promise, I swear I will never ever say that I'm gonna never do drugs again because that's impossible. Because I had done that so many times. I had gone to jail and gone, if you get me out of jail, I'll never do drugs again. And then the day I get out, right back to it." But
Yep.
I said, I'll never make that promise again. What I will do though is I will try as hard as I possibly humanly can to really make an honest effort at sobriety. I'll try my damnedest. I really will, because I just can't do this anymore. I've lost my brother. I lost my kid. I lost my life. I can't lose my freedom again, too. Like, I just can't. And so we pull up to this building, and I was very familiar with the jail as I had been there many times. And I didn't recognize this place. And I was like, "What? Where are we?" So we get out, and I look at the police officer, and I say, "Where are we?" And he goes, "We're at the Southwest Vista Hospital." And I said, "Well, what are we doing here?" And he says, "I'm taking you to get a psych evaluation and to detox." And I go, "Okay, so 72 hours, is that what it is?" And he goes, "Yeah." And then I go, "And I go to jail after that?" And he goes, "I'm not taking you to jail." And my mouth dropped. And he goes, "Yeah, I read your rap sheet. You've been to jail so many times. Clearly that hasn't worked for you. So I'm making a conscious effort to try something else in the hope that you see that life is worth living and you don't have to live the way you're living." So,
Wow.
of course, I became very emotional and I started crying and I just said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And he knew I wasn't really talking to him. I was speaking through him to everybody in my life. But he just looked at me and he was like, "You're going to be okay. You gotta really, you gotta try hard. It's not easy. And I get that, but you gotta try hard." And he goes, "And you should call your mom because she really misses you." And
Yeah.
he said, "You should call your son because apparently he's asking about you." So I don't know. I just felt so guilty about how selfish I had been. And I could not believe he had mercy on me, whatever it was that was looking over me the last couple of days. And I still don't know where I stand in my faith. I have days where I really struggle and I'm like, I don't think there's anything out there. I think I'm just going to die and that's going to be it. And then there's days when I'm like, no, I mean, I was stabbed 6 times inches away from an artery in my neck. I mean, the
Yeah.
doctors told me when I was getting out of the hospital, they're like, if you'd have just been a couple of inches to the left, you'd be dead. You'd have bled out. The gun going off right past my head. Police officers finding me with all manner of illegal items like checks and credit cards. They went through the car. They were like, well, we know what you were using this stuff for and all the drugs. And instead of taking me to jail, he takes me to detox, and at that moment, I was like, okay, there's no way this is just a coincidence.
Yeah.
There's got to be a God. This is insane. I cannot believe it. So I get into the hospital and I go to sleep and they put me on methadone and wean me off. But
Mhm.
you can only be in these hospitals for 3 days. They only do it for up to 3 days. The next day, I get on the phone with my drug dealer and I call my drug dealer and I'm like, hey, man, I need you to come pick me up and I need another ounce. But you're going to have to give it to me on credit. I had all my money taken. It's a long story, but we had a good relationship. He was like, yeah, I got you. Just give me the address. So I go, okay, I'll call you right back. So I hang up. I go to the front desk and I asked the lady, I looked at her, I said, ma'am, and she says, yes. And it hit me instantly, that feeling, that moment of clarity I had. I feel like it was my higher power speaking to me. It was just like, remember that promise you made. You said you would really try to be sober. Getting picked up by your drug dealer is not the answer. And you told that police officer you would call your mother. So
Mhm.
be a man of your word. And for so long, I wasn't a man of my word. I was dishonest and I made a lot of empty, false promises to people. And I thought, okay, that's how I'm going to start. I'm going to be honest and I'm going to keep my word. So I just looked at the woman and I said, what time is it? And she told me the time. And I went and instead of calling my drug dealer back, I called my mom and I immediately started crying and said, I'm so sorry. And I wish I could have been there, but it just didn't seem right, being at my brother's funeral, because if I had shown up, I would have gone either high on drugs or dope sick. I didn't want to be there like that. So I tried to explain it as best as I could to her. And she said, can you just be here now? Like, I know you weren't there, but can you just be here now? That's what I want from you. I said, yeah. And she said, your son misses you. And she said, your brother died, but I really feel like God spared you because you have a child and this child loves you so much. And he's asking about you and he really wants you to come home. And so I said, okay, I'm going to come home. So I went back to sleep and I woke up and the 3 days was over and I slept pretty much the whole way through because I was so high on meth for so many days. I slept nonstop. And I got into the car when my mom got there and I gave her a big hug and I saw my son and, it was a great moment. And she said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, well, where can I go? Because I couldn't stay with my mom. She was staying with my grandmother at the time who has Alzheimer's, and that just wouldn't have been appropriate. So she goes, how about sober living? And I thought, sober living? But I said, okay, what are my options? And she said, well, I can't really put you in rehab because you don't have insurance and I don't have 30 grand to shell out to a rehab facility right now.
Right.
Sober living is around $1,000 a month and I can't afford that. So let's give it a try. So I went into sober living and that was the day I really began again, I guess you could say. Everything changed. I started going to meetings and I started telling people the truth above all else. And I started really trying to be sober, and it's fascinating. I've had a couple of relapses over the years. I tell people I started getting clean in 2021, which means
Right.
my recovery journey started in 2021, but I've had a couple of lapses and bumps in the road. And I've had periods like a couple of days where I've gotten high again. Right now, I have over a year clean.
A blessed brother.
Yeah.
Coming
uh,
back.
yeah. And I'm in a place now in my life where I really feel like I can't say this is it. I'll be sober for the rest of my life, but I finally don't have those relapse feelings or those feelings of if I could just do just a little bit, just one more time, I'm home and I'm at peace with my sobriety. And I think a lot of people, they relapse a lot because they don't come to terms with that sense of peace with their sobriety. They want to be sober. I know so many people that are getting high right now and they want to be sober. it really makes me upset when people are like, if you want to quit, you'll just quit. I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. Trust me.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be sober for years, years and years. I couldn't because the disease of addiction had consumed me. And, but I'm finally at peace with my sobriety. I met my wife pretty early on in my recovery, and we dated for a while, and then we got married. And anytime I've had a relapse, which has been 3 times, I think I've had 3 relapses in the last, 4 or 5 years. She's basically said, okay, you're going to have to go to rehab for a month because the 3 days you chose to get high set you back a whole year. So 1 month versus a whole year, that's a pretty good compromise. And before my wife, I was super anti-rehab. I was like, no, that place is for a bunch of people that feel sorry for themselves, and it's a bunch of whiners, and screw that. I'll never be that kind of person. And my wife, really, I got to give her a lot of credit. She got me insurance, which I had never had in my life, and she got me into rehab, which I had never done in my life. And she taught me sort of a new way to live. I started paying very close attention to my mental health, and I got on psych meds, and
Yeah.
a lot of trauma too as a kid from my mom and my stepfather and my father not being there and all these
Well,
things. And I'm a big advocate now. I used to be super anti psych meds and super anti therapy, super anti all that stuff because I just felt like it was just an excuse for someone to feel sorry for themselves. And it was pathetic, but complete 360.
yeah.
So I'm in therapy once a week. I take psych meds every day. And I, yeah, I've gone to rehab a couple of times. And the last time was over a year ago. It's been great. It's been wonderful.
You talked about that obsession has been, it sounds like it's beginning to get lifted, and I remember when they had told me, the obsession to drink will be lifted from you. And I was like, you don't know who you're talking to. Like, bud, like that's all I think about. It's never going to be lifted. And it took me a long time. And all of a sudden one day I look back, I said, holy shit, man. I think they're right. Like, I think that obsession that I had for so long to drink, I think it's been lifted. And like they talk about the promises and then, you know, all the, just like you too. And by the way, just for whatever it's worth, my sobriety date's 2006, but I went to rehab in 2002. It took me 4 years. I was in and out for 4 years. I went up to
Yeah.
New York and, we all have our journeys. We all have our paths. It's not a straight line. Life is better than anyone that I've talked to. You realize that life is not a straight line, right? But you're here now, man, right? And you got people counting on you. And you've been here over a year now. And, you could just tell there's hope in your story, man. Well, your whole story is a lot of hope, but look at where you were. You had no hope. You had the gun to your head. You got that story's incredible. Have you ever spoken to that police officer? Sounds like an incredible dude. Have you ever spoken to him?
I was so messed up that day. I forgot to get his name and badge number. I've over the years I've thought about finding a way to look it up. I'm sure I could look up the incident report. I could just tell him my name and have him run. I know it happened in September of 2021,
Yeah.
but I wanted to reach out to him and just tell him, hey man, you basically saved my life. Like you did for me what nobody else had done. And you broke through, you got through to me and you changed everything.
It's not lost on me, and I'm sure it's not lost on you, that story, though, which is incredible. And we can say whatever we want, but I've just heard it so many times. It's right after you said a prayer. And it sounded like you mentioned those foxhole prayers. I was just like, God, get me out of this one. I'll never do this one again. And right back the very next night. But you said that prayer in the police car, and anything. It's like your higher power, like you said, whoever may be out there, and look at where they took you, and look at what changed. I mean, that was an altered state for your life. It pivoted you, I think, in more than a way. Have you kind of thought about that part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was, of course, praying silently in my head. And I was thinking about everything when I was in the hospital. Like, there's no way that was just a coincidence. The gun missed my head. I was planning to kill myself, but the gun just randomly goes off. This guy stabs me and misses an artery. This police officer who should have taken me to jail for possession of a controlled substance,
Right.
or more, possession of a controlled substance, less than an ounce, felon in possession of a firearm, ×2, credit card abuse, stolen property, stolen merchandise, all these things. And yeah, instead of doing that, he takes me to a place to get clean. And I have not had a lot of good experience with police officers. I've gotten arrested a lot, and they usually see my rap sheet, and so they hassle me and give me a hard time. For whatever reason, this guy, I think my higher power was working through this guy this one day. You know what I mean? And we're supposed to meet each other. It was destiny.
It just sounds that part of your incredible story is, it sounds like a real public servant, right? Like he looked at your sheet and right. And like, yeah, I get it. I know what it's like to piss cops off too. Believe me, they look at your rap sheet like, look at this guy, and go through the motions and drag your ass to jail and throw you in the clink and then off they'll go. But this guy looked at you and said, man, he wanted to help you. Incredible. It's amazing. And it, like I said, it seems to have changed. And then and then after that, your muscle memory is to wake up the next morning, call your guy, come get me, bring the stuff. And you have that moment of clarity with the lady at the desk and you get honest, which is such a big part of our sobriety and our recovery, right? Like we get honest and it's not easy, especially when we've been lying and we're scheming for as long as we could or as long as we can, or some of us the whole entire time until up to that moment. So, that's in and of itself is a new life, is a new way of life, being honest, getting honest. And there you are. You started. Now you're a recovery advocate, right? You share your story. That's a big deal, man. That is a big deal. And that's why, I never hear the term recover out loud, but I love it. And I love the whole community, right? We recover out loud. We share our stories so others don't have to suffer in silence. I didn't know about this whole entire kind of online sober community, but man, like I said at the top, like, I don't care how you get here. There's a lot of ways to get here. And you got a powerful story. What's going on? Tell us about where we can find you and tell us about some of your music and where we can go follow you.
Sure. So I'm on Instagram. It's just Josh Datant. That's Deant. On YouTube, it's the same thing, Josh Datant. You can check out my website, joshdatant.com. And I'd appreciate it if you give me a like and a subscribe. I have music on my YouTube, and just follow I'm 50% music, 50% recovery. So all my content on Instagram is either about music or about recovery. So
That's awesome.
I love doing these interviews and these podcasts, and I love reaching out to people. I have people that reach out to me now and ask me for help, which is great. I love helping people. And sometimes the only way in which I know to help is to listen. I don't have all the answers. I'm not somebody who knows everything.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll tell people, listen, I don't know what to do. If I were in your situation, I don't know what I would do, but I'll be here to listen and maybe we can work through this together. But yeah, I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and my website, and that's basically it.
Well, recovery and music, those are two things that I'm very much into myself. So go give Josh a follow, go give him a like, go check out his website. I checked it out all day today and it's very cool. He's got a lot of stuff and you're a talented dude, man. Keep coming back, right, Josh? Keep coming back, man. There's a beautiful life on the other side of this. There's so much more to life, as you know, and you're starting to even really, really know there's so much more to life and on this side of it. You've been through it. Like, you've been on that side. It doesn't work, brother. Like, keep coming back. You got way too much to give and way too much to go.
Yeah, thank you. Same with you. Yeah, keep coming back. It works if you work it.
That's right, brother. That's right, brother. Go give him a follow. All this stuff, all that will be in the show notes, Josh, so everyone can find you and go give you a like and a follow. And stay in touch too, man. We're going to be following you closely, brother.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
God bless. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Begin Again podcast. If today's story moved you, inspired you, and reminded you that healing is possible, I'd love for you to share it. Subscribe, leave a review, and help us spread the message that no one is too far gone to begin again. And if you're ready to wear your recovery with pride, visit us at recoverbrand.com. That's RCVR Brand.com. And until next time, take your power back.